Yo, what's up guys, Alf here, and today I'm going to be doing a deck building deep dive on exploration in Historic, and this is a bit of a special one. So basically in this video I'm going to be covering 4 different decks that I've been doing a lot of work on over the past couple of weeks, ever since exploration got added. I'm going to be talking about Memory Jar Sheoldred combo, Omniscience combo, Yawgmoth, as well as Enchantress as well, and all of those decks I consider to be decent tier 2 decks. I don't think they're quite on the level of a deck like Eldrazi right now. Speaking of which, I'm also working on an exploration build of Eldrazi, but I'm not going to include it in this video because I'm still working on it, and there's a chance I might want to cover it in a full deck guide video in future as well. But in this video, like I said, I'm going to be covering those 4 decks. So basically what I'm going to do in this video is start off by talking about, you know, the deck building ethos I worked on with exploration, the challenges, trying to build around this card, talking around basically the core that I built around for a number of these decks. Then we're going to be looking at each deck individually with some gameplay. So I'm going to do, explaining all the card choices and deck building decisions of one deck, then one match of gameplay of that deck, then the, deck building choices in the next deck. So there'll be timestamps down in the description if you want to skip to a particular deck, or if you want to skip straight to the gameplay, just feel free to go down to the description and hop about whatever interests you. But anyway, let's just get straight into it. So like I said, exploration has been one of the most interesting cards for me to deck build around because the ceiling on this card is incredibly high. I think this is one of the best ramp cards that we have access to in Historic right now, but this is a very difficult card to build around because for this to be effective, or for you to use it to its maximum, you can use this to potentially cast 4 drops on turn 2, which is obviously incredibly powerful. But for you to do that consistently, you need to have either a very high land count, because you need 4 lands in your hand by your second turn, which is very difficult to do unless you're running 30 plus lands, or you need to have a lot of card draw so that you can consistently put the extra land in play, or you need some way to reuse your lands, right, recycle them, or ideally a mixture of the 3 of them. But the real issue with doing either of those things is that you also need your deck to be functional when you don't have exploration, which I think is the most difficult part of it, because we obviously do have some similar cards to exploration in the format, right? We've got our Boreal Grazer and Kami of Bamboo Groves, but those are significantly weaker than exploration. Obviously they give you a body on the battlefield, which does make a difference, but the difference between just getting one shot of that effect, just putting 1 land in play, and just consistently being able to put an extra land in play is such a big difference. So there isn't really redundancy for this card. So I think the biggest deck building issue with exploration, or I guess the biggest deck building challenge, is to build your deck in a way that you can consistently get use of this, which, like I said, either involves a high land count, a lot of card draw, or ways to recycle your lands, or a combination of those. But you also need the deck to function when you don't draw explanation. So it's all well and good having a 32 land deck, but in Historic, most decks don't normally function like that when you don't draw the exploration. So in terms of the core of the deck that most of these decks are going to show you is built around is exploration plus Icetill Explorer. I think this package is so powerful now. I think Icetill Explorer was already a good card before the release of exploration, but now I think it really powers up what this card is doing. So the idea here is that if you have 4 lands in your opening hand, or by your turn 2, you can go exploration into a land, then on turn 2 play 2 lands, play Icetill Explorer, and then you can play another land from your hand, or for example, if you've cracked a Prismatic Vista to get a basic, you can replay that from the graveyard. And then once you have Icetill Explorer into play, if you're reusing lands from your graveyard, then it's naturally going to mill over, or if you have fetch lands or stuff like Ghost Quarter or Waterlogged Grove, you can just keep replaying lands from your graveyard, ensure that you're doubling up on the exploration every single turn, and then Icetill Explorer will just keep milling your graveyard, keep putting lands in, and then we've got Shifting Woodland, which we can replay from the graveyard, and then obviously Icetill Explorer is going to be milling over other cards, which then enables you to get Delirium online. It will also then mill over some of your payoffs, which you can then use Shifting Woodland to copy. So Icetill Explorer, even on its own without exploration, if you're running Shifting Woodland, is basically like a self-contained combo enabler, right? It's just like a 1 card thing that will just turn on your combo over the course of a few turns if it survives, as you're milling cards over into your graveyard. And there's a lot of other interesting stuff that we can do with this as well. So in terms of the lands, I think Prismatic Vista is just a must here, right? Because even if you don't have exploration, it's really nice to be able to go Vista, crack, play play Icetill Explorer and just guarantee have a land in the graveyard. And then if you do have Prismatic Vista in the graveyard and you do have Exploration and you go Vista, crack for a land, Vista, crack for a land, you're milling 4 cards every single turn, which gets you closer to the Shifting Woodland, gets more lands in the graveyard. We also have Ghost Quarter here, which is absolutely huge. Now, obviously, Eldrazi is the top deck right now, and being able to spam Ghost Quarters is really nice at just slowing them down. Now, it isn't as effective as it is in Modern, for example, because most historic builds of Eldrazi, at the very least, are running Utopia Sprawl themselves, which means they have a lot of basics. So it's kind of hard to run Eldrazi out of basics unless you do it over a few turns. But the whole point here is that it slows them down, right? It's a road bump early in the game to just cut them off their soul lands. And then as the game goes on, you can just get to a point, if you do have Exploration plus Icetill, where you can just run them out of basics, or, you know, force them to find a waste, then hit the waste and cut them off colorless mana at the very least, which then cuts them off running cards like, well, casting cards like Kozilek's Command. Not to mention Ghost Quarter is obviously phenomenal against those more greedy mana bases that are running 3 colors, or I think there is still some 2-color decks that are only running 1 or 2 basics, so it's potentially even more impactful against them. So, you know, going Icetill on turn 2 and having a Ghost Quarter in hand and then just start spamming Ghost Quarter is really powerful as well in some matchups. And I think there's also quite a lot of nice crossover synergies here as well. So, for example, one of the big issues that I said with Exploration is that you need to have redundancy for your ramp elsewhere, or if you're running more expensive cards like Icetill Explorer to cast ahead of curve off Exploration, you're just going to get them stuck in your hand uncastable before turn 4 if you have hands where you don't have Exploration. So we need some other ramp, and I think the best option for most decks at least is Utopia Sprawl. Now obviously we do have some other effects similar to Exploration like Arboreal Grazer and Kami of Bamboo Groves, but the issue with those cards, if you're running them alongside Exploration, is they're all cards that are competing for the same resource, right? One of the issues with Exploration is just ensuring you have enough lands in your hand to be able to use this consistently as ramp. And if you're running Exploration with Kami and with Arboreal Grazer, then they're all cards that are competing for the same resources, if that makes sense. Now, having said that, I do have one of the decks that is running Kami and Arboreal Grazer, which is the Yawgmoth list. But the difference there is that's a list because of Yawgmoth that can turn the body, right, the Arboreal Grazer and the Kami, alongside other lands like Colney Garden, into card advantage to kind of counteract that, if that makes sense. Whereas in a list like this, where we don't have any way to turn creatures into card advantage, it makes more sense, I think, to run Utopia Sprawl, which is just way more resilient to interaction, right? It's much less likely to die compared to a card like Birds of Paradise, for example. And the really nice thing about Utopia Sprawl here is that obviously it incentivizes you to run a lot of forests, right? We've got Prismatic Vista plus Breeding Pool plus 6 forests in order to get to 14, which is what I would consider the minimum to have a consistent use of Utopia Sprawl. And the nice thing with that is, since we already want to be running a lot of forests for Utopia Sprawl, it means that we're going to consistently have basics to fetch with Prismatic Vista. So even if we don't have any other lands in the graveyard, if we have Prismatic Vista, we can just keep going, right? We're very, very unlikely to run out of basics because we're running a lot of forests for Utopia Sprawl. And then by extension, the really nice thing and with Shifting Woodland as well is because we have a lot of forests for Utopia Sprawl, that also means that we're very consistently going to have Shifting Woodland entering untapped, which is obviously very important in a ramp deck, especially Exploration, where we do ideally want to be having 4 lands on turn 2 if we can, which is really nice. And then additionally, outside of Ghost Quarter, we also have Waterlog's Grove. Now, not every colour pair has access to these, but if you are running, Simic or Golgari, for example, having access to this as a land that you can basically just loop with Icetill Explorer and Exploration in order to turn this land replaying into card advantage is really nice. So we've obviously got Icetill Explorer here, but it's just with Exploration, even without Exploration, with Shifting Woodland, Waterlog Grove and Ghost Quarter, this card is just like a 1-card enabler for so many different things. If this card survives, it's going to fill your graveyard, it's going to ramp you, it's going to give you access to Ghost Quarter to hit the opponent's land, it's going to give you access to Shifting Woodland to be able to copy your other win conditions, it's going to give you access to Waterlog Grove in order to draw a lot of cards. So I just think Icetill Explorer, especially powered up with Exploration, is just like a 1-card enabler if it survives. And then additionally, we've obviously got Malevolent Rumble here, which I think works very well, and you're going to see in most of these lists, because it enables you to find your Icetill Explorer, ramp into it, fill the yard for Shifting Woodland, fill the yard of lands for Icetill Explorer to replay. And additionally, obviously, we need to be running other payoffs in the deck as well. As I'll show in a minute, one of the things that's important for me when I'm building this deck is to ensure that we have other payoffs that can recoup the card disadvantage, because Exploration basically empties your hand really quickly if you are playing multiple lands. So we want other payoffs similar to Icetill Explorer that we can play and then immediately start recouping card advantage. And those are other cards that we want to be able to ramp into with Rumble. They're also very likely going to be permanents that Rumble can find as well. So this is kind of going to be the core package that most of the decks that you're going to see are built around. And I think it's very powerful. And if you are running Exploration, I think Icetill is the way to go in most lists. Not all lists, as you'll see with the Enchantress list. I'm choosing not to run Icetill in that list because it's very high synergy and doesn't really work particularly well with Icetill, but most of the lists I'm going to show you in a second are built around this core. So this is the first deck that I came up with, and this is obviously running the same core that we spoke about a second ago with Sprawl, Exploration, Rumble, and Icetill with the lands that I talked about as well. But what we've got in addition here is we've got Sheoldred plus Memory Jar, which is kind of just works as a combo in and of itself, right? If you've got Sheoldred in play and you crack Memory Jar, each player draws 7, so you gain 14, the opponent loses 14. Obviously not a one-shot, but you've got to remember as well that the opponent will also lose 2 off their upkeep draw, which is 16 damage, and all they need past that is, you know, a couple of shock lands or taking damage off Mana Confluence or something else, or, you know, attacking with Sheoldred, for example, and that's enough to win the game. Or, you know, you just put them low enough where Sheoldred just kills them over the next couple turns. So this is a really powerful combo, but the really nice thing about these two cards is they're good standalone cards, so if you do have Exploration plus 4 lands, you can cast Sheoldred on 2, you can cast Memory Jar on turn 3, and you know, Sheoldred obviously doesn't recoup card advantage, but it can just dominate the game if the opponent doesn't have an answer, and Memory Jar just does completely refuel your hand. Now obviously a lot of the time you'll have to cast Memory Jar and then wait either until the opponent's turn or during your turn to crack it to actually be able to use the 7 cards that you draw, but it's a really nice way to go Exploration, empty your hand of lands, and then just use Memory Jar to refuel, because one of the weaknesses if you are running Exploration plus a high land count, which we are here, right, we've got 28 plus the 4 Fell the Profane, so we're essentially a 32 land deck, so you are going to have a decent number of draws where you go Exploration, empty your hand, and then you're kind of out of gas a little bit, so having Memory Jar as a way to refuel is really huge. Then the fact they work together as a combo is really nice, but the other really nice thing is they're also just both good standalone cards to copy with Shifting Woodland, right? Being able to copy Woodland for Sheoldred to either attack or block, or you know make a copy against a deck like Lotus Field combo where their whole deck just draws and you're going to burn them out really easily is nice. And then Memory Jar you can also just copy with Woodland and crack to draw 7, which is also really nice because say you do go Sheoldred plus Memory Jar and 14 damage isn't enough, say they're not taking much damage off shocklands or they have a way to gain life. Once Memory Jar's been used once, you can just use Shifting Woodland to copy it and then crack it again to do another 14, and obviously if you don't have Shifting Woodland, chances of finding it off a draw 7 are very high as well. So the really nice thing here is you've got 2 cards that are good to cast off Exploration early, good on their own, good together, and good individually to copy with Shifting Woodland as well, which is really nice. And then the other card, another card that I've been very, very impressed with in Exploration decks is Verdant Dread, because this is a card where if you can get to 5 mana, this card on its own will just snowball and take over the game. Plus, on top of that, it's also a way for us to find Icetill and Sheoldred more consistently, because if we go Verdant Dread and we manifest Dread one of these 2 cards, we can obviously pay 4 to flip it, and then if we have Icetill Explorer, we can start just using its value and replaying stuff from the graveyard. If we have Sheoldred, then we have a Sheoldred in play that we can use to obviously combo with the Memory Jar or just be a threat that can just dominate the board. And then like I said, once we do have 5 mana, we can just keep activating this every single turn, get more creatures in play, start filling the graveyard, because obviously when you manifest Dread, one of the 2 cards goes in the graveyard, which helps fuel Shifting Woodland, helps get Delirium online, helps get lands into the graveyard for Icetill Explorer. So basically the whole idea with this deck is we have multiple threats that are good to cast with Exploration and good to copy with Shifting Woodlands and recoup the lost lands that you just put into play very quickly, if that makes sense. Then the last card I want to talk about is Fell the Profane, which I think is a really nice way of having enough lands to consistently cast 4 drops on turn 2 off Exploration, whilst also ensuring that we don't completely flood out. This is, obviously 4 mana for removal is above rate in Historic, but this is a deck that can get to 4 mana way quicker than most other decks, so that's not really much of an issue. And having main deck interaction in this sort of deck is absolutely huge. Having it as part of the mana base, it just feels like a really really nice way to keep the land count high, but also help us not flood out at the same time, if that makes sense. Then quickly go over the sideboard. Damping Sphere, don't get it twisted. I'm not running this for Eldrazi. I don't think Damping Sphere is a good card against Eldrazi because you're taking turn 2 off to not impact the board in any way, to only slow them down a little bit. Damping Sphere is pretty much exclusively for Lotus Field combo, which is a deck I am scared of right now and is tricky. This deck is, you know, at its core a fair deck. You do have a combo kill in a way, if that makes sense, but it's not as fast or consistent as other more dedicated combo decks. So I think having Damping Sphere, especially against a deck like Lotus Field where it's hard for us to interact efficiently with that deck, I think Damping Sphere is important there. Surgical Extraction is mainly for reanimated decks. Like I said, obviously we do have a combo, but at its core, this is a fair deck, so we do need ways to get ahead of the more degenerate decks. But then I also feel like it's important to have a lot of interaction in the sideboard. We don't have that much in the main deck. We're more focused on just our proactive game plan game one. But against decks like Auras and Wizards and, you know, Boros Energy, I do think it's important to be able to board into a more interactive deck post-sideboard, and that's also why I like 2 copies of Culling Ritual, mainly for the Lurrus decks. And then I also want to bring in a couple of copies of Boseiju as, you know, removal. Obviously, this is going to be nice against decks like Affinity, but we also do want to be able to answer Graveyard Hate. It is a land, so it works well with, you know, Exploration, Icetill Explorer as well, sort of. But, you know, Boseiju is here for largely for control decks to be able to answer Graveyard Hate, so we can use Shifting Woodland. But having said that, the really nice thing about this particular list is we are good at using Woodland, but we're not reliant on it, right? Sheoldred plus Memory Jar works without needing Woodland. Verdant Dread works without needing Woodland, and that's the core of the deck, right? I think Icetill Explorer enables Woodland on its own, that you don't need to build the whole deck around it. So this deck is more vulnerable to Graveyard Hate, which is why I think we can get away with only a couple Boseiju in the sideboard. So next up, I've just got a match with this so you guys can see it in action, and then we'll move on to the next deck. Okay, so we're going second here, and I can't keep this. If we had like an Exploration or another piece of ramp, then maybe, but okay, this one looks a lot better, right? We've got 2 pieces of ramp, we got Icetill, we got Verdant Dread. I think we can put the Memory Jar back here. You know, we've still got a good chance of digging towards that through what we've got here. Okay, basic forest from the opponent could be a number of things. So going to lead here on the Utopia Sprawl, and we want to pick black, I think, because we want to ensure that we have access to double black for Sheoldred if we do happen to draw that. Okay, Fanatic of Rona, so could obviously be either Devotion or Team of Battlecry combo. Going to lead on the Rumble here. Wow, okay, all lands. I think we'll take the Peatland here. Again, like I said, it's important to have double black for Sheoldred, but also we need double green for Icetill Explorer, so I think I'll just play the Vista and crack it. I don't think it really makes a difference going for it now. And then I'll get Forest because we already have double black in case we do draw Sheoldred. And then since we already have, you know, the 4th land for Icetill Explorer, I'm just going to go for Verdant Dread here as well, just to get it into play. And nice, we hit an Icetill Explorer. So now, even if this one that we've got in hand gets killed, we have another backup that we can flip on a later turn, which is pretty huge. So the fact the opponent has double basic Forest makes me think we're probably against Devotion. Okay, yeah, almost certainly against Devotion now by the looks of it. So very unlikely to be either against Team of Battlecry combo or the team version of Devotion. Okay, so opponent goes for Coating, which seems kind of greedy. I mean, obviously they don't know that we have Icetill Explorer, but, you know, we don't really care about Coating, even though we have, what am I saying? Even though we have a land with Utopia Sprawl on it now, we can just recast lands from the graveyard, so I'm not really worried about getting shut out by Khan here. Not to mention we already have 2 power creatures in play, so if the opponent does invest 2 mana into Liquid Metal Coating, it's possible that we can just attack Khan down next turn. Now, obviously, they do have access to a lot of mana, especially if they have a 4 power creature here, so not 100% sure. Okay, they do run out the Coating, so they are presumably just going to plus the Khan, take out our Forest here, but that does leave them with only 2 mana here to defend the Khan. And we have Sheoldred that we can cast next turn guaranteed anyway, right? Because we can recast Vista and grab a Swamp. Okay, so they do have another creature that can block. And we find Memory Jar. Okay, so the awkward thing is, obviously, Memory Jar is shut off by Khan, so we need to deal with Khan as a priority here. So I'm going to grab a Swamp, and then we can obviously play another land because of the Icetill Explorer ability. So again, we're not really too concerned about the Vista. And I'm going to go... sorry, not the Vista, what am I saying? Not too concerned about the Coating. But I'm going to go for the Vista here just to get more mills. I was going to say to try and find Shifting Woodland, which we've already found here, which is huge. And then I'm going to attack first, just to see how they block. Right, I was going to say there's a chance they maybe double block the face down card. But either way, it doesn't really matter. I don't think they're likely to attack in with the Fanatics, especially after we cast Sheoldred. So if we attack first with mana open, there's a chance they don't block because they don't know if we have a combat trick or a way to shrink the Fanatic, for example. But either way, I think we're in a good position here, right? They're either going to keep using the coating, which just is ineffective against us because we can just replay all of our lands with Icetill, or they can -2 Karn, which gets rid of the Karn and opens up the possibility of Memory Jar for us to combo kill next turn. Now, having said that, they do have access to 6 mana here, which does give them a lot of good options to get off Karn. And they could obviously also draw a 4-power creature, which would then enable them to have, like 10 mana, 9 or 10 mana, which is scary. So we'll see what they grab off the Karn here, but I think we're in a good spot, right? As long as we can cast Memory Jar, as long as they don't cast another Karn here, we can potentially just combo kill them next turn, which is pretty big. They go for Godfrey statue. So if they tap out for this here, they're just dead, right? I mean, obviously, they don't know that we have Memory Jar, but even if they cast the Godfrey statue here, we should, as long as Icetill survives, we can just recast 2 lands from the graveyard, and then that's enough mana to be able to cast Memory Jar even under Godfrey statue, which is pretty nice. Okay, so they are on Selesnya, which probably means they're on Elesh, if I had to guess. Okay, another Woodland is nice. So now we can replay Woodland. See what we mill. Exploration. And then we'll go for a forest. And we do already have Memory Jar in the graveyard. So we could actually, even if we didn't have Memory Jar in hand here, just use Shifting Woodland to copy Memory Jar and crack it for the win. We don't even need Memory Jar in hand here. So this just kind of shows the redundancy and how nice Icetill Explorer is as a self-enabler, especially game 1 where the opponent doesn't have Graveyard Hate. And the other really nice thing about this deck, speaking of Graveyard Hate, is even if the opponent does have Graveyard Hate, we don't need it, right? We didn't use any of our Graveyard synergies other than replaying stuff with Icetill Explorer here. We just had the Memory Jar. We can just cast it without needing to. So we could obviously go for Woodland here. But instead, I'm just going to cast the Memory Jar from hand. And then, we just crack it, deal 14 to the opponent, and then, obviously that will kill them here. But even if they'd left the Fanatics back to block, they would still be taking an additional 2 off their upkeep as well. So yeah, got their game 1, which is nice. Now, against Devotion, we don't really need to worry about what they're going to board in against us because obviously most of their sideboard will be dedicated for Karn slots. So I think I'm just going to shift it back. I don't think there's anything in our sideboard that is particularly effective against them. Now, it is a bit awkward, like I said, that Karn shuts off Memory Jar. But like you saw last game, we can just get on the board and hopefully start attacking down Karn before that becomes an issue. And again, we don't need Memory Jar to win. And we obviously have a variety of other ways to win with Verdant Dread, potentially, using Ghost Quarter to cut them off lands. Now, having said that, they look like they're on a lot of basic forest because of the deck they're running, so I doubt that's going to pan out against them. But being able to use Ghost Quarter to take out Nykthos, being able to use Ghost Quarter to take out lands with Utopia Sprawl on will be very useful in these sorts of matchups. Okay, so opponent has a lot of ramp here, so we'll see what their top end is, but thankfully we have that kind of 6-star of exploration, 4 lands including Utopia Sprawl, so we can start replaying lands from our graveyard straight away. We don't even need to use this Fell the Profane, which is very useful. Like I said, Karn can be an issue, and we already have Fell the Profane as just a clean way to answer it, which is huge. Then we get 2 mills off the Icetill Explorer, find a peatland, which is really nice to turn Icetill Explorer into card advantage. So then we get another forest, mill again, and there's the Ghost Quarter. So now we can use the Ghost Quarter to take out that forest with a Utopia Sprawl on it, which is really big. Okay, there's Cavalier. And they do mill over a Storm the Festival, which is a little bit scary. Thankfully, I think Sheoldred is a pretty good card against them, though. Especially if they have, Outlast the Liberator. No, what's it called? Outcast Liberator, that's the one. Or Kiora as well. Sheoldred can often just kill them from their own game plan before they can get a Karn to kill it. Because with Karn, the only commonly played card that really answers Sheoldred is Cityscape Leveler, I think. Okay, so we've got another Icetill as well. So we could potentially, with Exploration 2 Icetills, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if we can actually Ghost Quarter the opponent out the game here, but I think it's more of a priority to get Sheoldred in play. Especially because they could have one of those turns where they pop off. Oh no, auto tap has messed me up here. I really wanted to have Ghost Quarter untapped so that we could maybe hit, you know, a Nykthos or something, but it shouldn't matter because, you know, even if they do play Nykthos, they can activate it before we get an opportunity to Ghost Quarter, so hopefully it won't end up mattering here. I guess it would matter if they go Nykthos into Kiora to try and untap the Nykthos, then we would want to Ghost Quarter instead. But it looks like they don't have it, so thankfully we hopefully won't get punished here. We'll see what else they use here. So they do have Con, they do have a minus, but we have 2 Fell the Profanes here, which is, you know, really nice, as this is just a very good playable card. It is slightly overcosted, but in a deck with Exploration and a ton of ramp, that doesn't really matter. Oh wow, Con Silex, that's one you don't see much. That is actually pretty effective against us though. I don't know if we've got a great way to deal with that. I don't know whether to crack the peatland or not. So they can crack for X equals 4, and there's not really too much we can do about it, really. I mean, we can start trying to Ghost Quarter their lands, but actually, what I probably should have done here is not cast the Icetill Explorer. I think I played a little bit too quickly. I think I'm supposed to just repeatedly crack the Nurturing Peatland, which will obviously gain us a bunch of life under Sheoldred and refuel our hands so that we can follow up with the Silex with actually, you know, a good follow-up. Because at the moment we don't really have that much stuff in hand. So instead, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just hoping to mill over a woodland here. That was the main reason why I went for the Icetill, to try and find a woodland so that we can copy Icetill from the graveyard once it's destroyed. But I think what I'm supposed to do instead was just keep cracking the... we can't crack Vista because of Khan's Silex passive. Wow. Okay, that's not an interaction I'm used to. But yeah, I think I've made a couple of mistakes here. Basically the idea of playing Icetill was I hope to mill over Woodland, play Woodland, and then we can use Woodland to copy Icetill after Khan's Silex blows the board up. But what I think I should have done instead, the safer option here, would have been to just keep cracking Peatland and replaying it to ensure that we have a hand full of stuff to follow up the Silex with. Instead here, I think I'm going to take out the Cavalier. Whatever they put on top, we can Ghost Quarter one of their lands to either cut them off a mana or force them to lose access to Storm the Festival on top. Getting rid of Cavalier also enables us to attack down the Khan. Although I guess if they're cracking the Khan Silex anyway, we should maybe have held on to Fell the Profane, maybe, but then they're not forced to use it. They could have maybe used Khan for another activation, so... yeah, I think I did just play too quickly. I think I would have been better off just cracking Peatland multiple times with Woodland and Sheoldred in play and kept the Icetill Explorer in hand to follow up with. Yeah, this was a huge misplay on my part. Because if I just held on to the Icetill Explorer, I would have just had a good follow-up play, whereas now I kind of have nothing. I mean, we do have the Peatland to crack, but yeah, I definitely misplayed there for sure. We do have... Peatland to crack now though, but yeah, I think I was just playing too quickly. Hopefully we find something good here. Okay, Exploration, but at least we have Fell the Profane. So now we're both top decking, which yeah, I mean playing the Icetill into the Khan Silex was a mistake, but I did kind of want them to crack it. I kind of wanted to force them to crack it because otherwise we're just not committing to the board. So yeah, definitely would have been the better play to just keep looping Peatland there, I think. Oh, okay, sick. I mean, Memory Jar's great, and I think we crack it now. We have a lot of... we have Exploration and a decent amount of mana in play, and the opponent doesn't really have anything that is instant speed, so we don't have to worry about them getting value off it this turn. And then this is huge. We can get Verdant Dread online. So yeah, that was obviously a lucky top deck for sure, but if I'd played correctly and just cracked lands, we would have had that Memory Jar, you know, earlier because we'd have drawn a couple cards already and we would have had the Icetill Explorer in hand to follow it up with. So yeah, that was a huge misplay on my part, but it looks like we're still going to get there. Okay, and we found Icetill off the Verdant Dread. Not to mention we could obviously have copied it with Shifting Woodland, and then we can Rumble here, get another Woodland, and then even though we can't use this Woodland this turn, it will go to the graveyard, which we can then replay with Icetill Explorer if we copy it with Woodland. And now we should be good, because we can just keep activating Verdant Dread. So yeah, even though I misplayed pretty badly, we ended up getting there. So this next list is similar in ways to the previous one, but this one is much more focused on going infinite using Omniscience. So like I said, Icetill Explorer and just this core in general is very good at enabling Shifting Woodland, and obviously the most powerful thing to be copying with Shifting Woodland is Omniscience. And in this particular list, if we copy Omniscience with Shifting Woodland, and we have Karn plus one other non-land card in hand, we can go infinite by going cast Karn for free, -2 to get Ancestral Statue, then you cast and bounce Ancestral Statue 40 or 50 times depending on your life total, then on the last cast of Ancestral Statue, you bounce the Karn instead, recast the Karn for free, then -2 to get Aetherflux Reservoir, cast the Reservoir for free, then just cast the other card in your hand, and you'll gain 40 or 50 life, which will put you above 50. Then you pay 50 life and just dome the opponent for 50 to just win the game straight away, which is really huge. And this is a very big deal because we basically have a way to go infinite without needing to run clunky cards. And I actually think Karn is a nice payoff to just hardcast naturally anyway. It's a really nice card to ensure that we don't run out of gas off Exploration. You know, like I've said multiple times, one of the issues with Exploration is, you know, you can empty your hand of lands and then you'll just be out of gas very quickly, right? If you do have 4 hands in your opener and you do get Karn down on 2, for example, it's a really good way to just ensure that you don't run out of gas here, right? You can go Karn minus, grab the 1 ring, start drawing cards to ensure you don't run out of gas, or if you already have a lot of lands in play, you can get the more expensive options like Cityscape Lever or Portal to Phyrexia. It allows you to get a toolbox of hate cards depending on the matchup as well that I'll go over briefly once I've gone over the main deck. So Karn is really nice at giving us a way to go infinite without needing to run a card that is, you know, that we wouldn't want to run naturally as part of our ramp game plan anyway. Then another really nice card in this particular list is Memory Jar, because one of the issues with running Omniscience plus Shifting Woodland is you need to run enough cards in your main deck to be able to dig to your win condition without fizzling, right? Because otherwise it's going to be very common for you to go Shifting Woodland, copy Omniscience, play 1 or 2 spells but don't have access to card and then kind of fizzle out, if that makes sense. So most Woodland decks in the past have had to run a lot of looting effects, for example, or just cards that allow you to dig through your deck so you can eventually find your Karn or whatever your win condition is. Whereas here, I think Memory Jar and Rumble, which can find both Memory Jar and Karn Great Creator, gives you kind of a 1-card way that is really effective at ensuring that you don't fizzle out under Omniscience without having to dedicate so many slots in the deck for, you know, looting effects or other cards like Rumble that help you dig. Because if you have a Rumble or a Memory Jar, you're very likely to be able to keep going, right? If you cast Memory Jar off Omniscience, draw 7, you're very, very likely to be able to find another Memory Jar, a Rumble, or a Karn to help you combo off and keep going, if that makes sense. So it basically means we don't have to dedicate a ton of slots in the deck to not fizzle under Omniscience. Plus, like in the previous deck, it's also just another card that's good to copy with Shifting Woodland, so we have redundancy here. Now, obviously, as I mentioned there, most other Shifting Woodland Omniscience decks run red for looting effects in order to consistently get cards like Omniscience in the graveyard. But if you look at this particular build, the only card that we actually need to put in the graveyard and isn't hard castable, you know, reasonably, is Omniscience. And in mono green we have access to Phyrexian Scrapyard anyway, which we can find pretty consistently as a 4 of, and we can obviously also recast it from the graveyard with Icetill Explorer if we mill it over with Rumble or Verdant Dread. So we can find this pretty consistently. So if we do happen to draw Omniscience and we don't happen to mill it over off one of the other cards, we do have Scrapyard that enables us to pitch Omniscience to the graveyard. Not to mention Phyrexian Scrapyard also works incredibly well with Exploration, because if we don't have enough lands to have a second land to put into play off Exploration, we can discard one of our non-lands with Phyrexian Scrapyard in order to just keep hitting land drops, which is really huge as well. So not only does Scrapyard enable us to pitch Omniscience without needing to be in red, but it also is really nice to consistently make sure we have enough lands to cast off Exploration as well. And then obviously being in mono green, we can run a couple copies of Boseiju, which is very, very important in this particular build where we are a lot more vulnerable to graveyard hate. But having said that, we still have Verdant Dread, which I still really like in this list because we can hit 5 mana very consistently. It can just win the game on its own, even through graveyard hate, which is really big. So this core of the deck is definitely more vulnerable to graveyard hate than the previous one, but it is obviously have a higher ceiling as well because we can go infinite more consistently. Speaking of which, we also get a toolbox of Karn, which I'll go over quickly. We've got Tormod's Crypt's Graveyard, Haywire Might is Artifact and Enchantment Removal, Expedition Map, which helps us find Shifting Woodland if we already have Omniscience in the graveyard, Pithing Needle, which can be used against a number of decks, Damping Sphere, mainly here for Lotus Field combo. Now, obviously, this does prohibit our ability to combo off with Ancestral Statue, but Damping Sphere against Lotus Field and other, Storm-based combo decks hurts them a lot more than it hurts you, because we have other ways that we can win under Omniscience, like we can go Karn, Cityscape Leveler, or Portal to Phyrexia, for example. The Stonebrain is mainly here for Val combo, because we don't really have a good way to shut that off, but if we go Stonebrain and just extract one of the two pieces, it becomes really difficult for the opponent to win. One Ring obviously provides protection and card advantage, kind of fills the same slot as Memory Jar on the sideboard, but I really like having 4 Memory Jar in the main deck just because it ensures that we don't fizzle off Omniscience in a lot of situations. Obviously, Reservoir and Statue are important cards to be able to combo off, and then we've got Cityscape Leveler and Portal to Phyrexia at the top end for if we already have a lot of lands through Exploration, or if we have Omniscience in play and we don't have another card to be able to do the Statue loop, or if we do have a Damping Sphere in play against Lotus Field, it just provides us with another way to start closing out the game. And then I also feel it's very important to have spot removal in the sideboard for decks like Wizards and Auras, because those are decks that can race you if you don't have a fast Omniscient start. So being able to pivot into these is really important in those sorts of matchups. So again, next up I'll have gameplay videos so you guys can see this deck in action, and then move on to the next one. Okay, so we're on the play here. And yeah, I think we can keep this. It's a little bit awkward that we don't have the 4th land yet. So if we do go Icetill Explorer on turn 3, we don't have another land to play straight away, but we could still play Karn on 3 depending on what the opponent's on. Okay, now we've got the 4th land, which is really nice. That gives us the option to use Icetill next turn and get the immediate ramp guaranteed. Interesting. I think I'm going to go for Icetill rather than Karn here, because it helps us get ahead on land, which means that, say like we did, we milled over another land here, which means that we can now go Karn and immediately play a 2-drop next turn. And I'm not playing Liquid Metal Coating in this build because I always feel like it's better to get something else for your proactive game plan, and oftentimes it's pretty risky to go Karn Coating, but maybe this is a situation where it could be worth doing, so maybe it's worth adding it in here. So still not sure what the opponent's on. Oh, Primal Prayers. Okay, interesting. So that's kind of scary because it means they can just go infinite from an empty board here, potentially. Right, if they have Primal Prayers into Guide of Souls into Evangel. So we could go for Damping Sphere. That would cut us off going infinite with Karn, but we could still potentially win with, Portal to Phyrexia or Cityscape Leveler, even if we do go for that. So I think I am going to do that. I'm going to get Damping Sphere, and then we can Rumble and cast Damping Sphere in the same turn. Maybe I'm supposed to lead on Rumble, though, just in case we... Sorry, I'm just trying to think... I mean, we're 1 mana short of going Stonebrain on Primal Prayers. That was the other thing I was considering. But yeah, I think maybe we're supposed to lead on Rumble, because if we immediately put Delirium online and get Omniscience into the graveyard, then we could have potentially won this turn. But that's pretty unlikely considering we have 2 Omniscience in hand. I think here I'm going to go for Scrapyard so that we can pitch Omniscience to the graveyard. I mean, we could have gone Icetill and then replayed Scrapyard from the graveyard, but we could already copy Explorer with Woodland in the graveyard if we need, and I think it's more important to guarantee going Scrapyard into Omniscience next turn, and then we can minus Karn and just play like a Portal to Phyrexia or a Cityscape Leveler for free. So opponent plays a tune with Aether. See what else they've got. It looks to me like they're playing more of a less creature-heavy version of the deck, considering we haven't seen any creatures at all. I mean, maybe we've just seen the wrong side of their deck, but the fact they're playing stock up over, Recruiter of the Guard, for example, makes me think they might just be on a version where... Oh, okay. I was going to say a version where... they're not on as many creatures. But now they've taken out Now they've taken out Damping Sphere, we can just win with Omniscience, right? We can pitch Omniscience with the Scrapyard, copy it, use Khan to get Ancestral Statue, and then loop it. Well, we need to do it like maybe 30-something odd times so that we have 50 life off the reservoir. So hopefully the opponent concedes, but they're well within their rights to make me play it out, especially because it's game 1. So if they do make me play it out, I might just edit it out, because otherwise you're just going to have to sit here watching me recast this for like, 30 odd times. Okay, so on this one I'm going to bounce back the Khan, and then we can go Khan, -2 for the reservoir. Omniscience then should put us over 50 life, and then we can just dome the opponent for 50 here. So the opponent taking out Damping Sphere, obviously that enables their combo, but it also then unlocks ours. And obviously, even if they didn't take out the Damping Sphere, we could have just got, a Cityscape Leveler for the win instead. So we've only got Dismember in the sideboard. Obviously, they are on Primal Prayers, which means that we do have the option to dismember their Guide of Souls, but it doesn't look like they're running that many creatures outside of that from what we saw of their deck anyway. So I'm just going to ship it back because... the only cards I would want to cut for Dismember really are Malevolent Rumble and Verdant Dread, and I think Verdant Dread is especially important post-sideboard to win through Graveyard Hate. Otherwise, you're a little bit too vulnerable to that, and it's pretty likely the opponent is running Graveyard Hate of some sort in the 75, so I'm just going to ship it back just because I'm not sure exactly the composition of my opponent's deck. I don't want to over-sideboard, right? I don't want to bring in Dismembers and then be dead for the majority of the game. Especially because we're like a proactive deck, so... But yeah, we'll see. If we just didn't see that they are running a decent amount of creatures, because they obviously have to be running, at the very least, Guide of Souls and Sigardian Evangel. Oh, wow, okay. This is the sort of hand that, you want to be running the deck for. I mean, we don't have a Prismatic Vista, which would be even better, but we still... we're going into our turn 2 with access to 5 mana here, essentially. And we've got Memory Jar as well, so we get to Utopia Sprawl here. Looks like the opponent has priority. Okay, they've got Fragment Reality, so that means we can't go for Memory Jar next turn, but we've still got Icetill Explorer. No 5th land to cast with the Explorer next turn, but I don't think it should matter too much. Okay, so they do have Rumble, and we'll see what they pick here. So obviously got the Guide of Souls, but we kind of knew that already. Oh, we do find the Prismatic Vista. Perfect. So now that's just guaranteed utility with the Icetill Explorer. Now we could potentially crack the Ghost Quarter here. And I think I am going to do that because I think... From the looks of their mana base, there's a chance they're not running very, very many basics, and hitting the Confluence, if they're not running basic Forest especially, could cut them off casting Primal Prayers entirely next turn. Oh, okay. I mean, to be fair, their key card is double green, so it does make sense they're running a basic Forest, but I felt it was worth trying to, start cutting them off basics if we can. Because obviously it looks like they are... well, at the very least, a 3-colour deck with, Aether Hub and stuff as utility lands. Okay, so they do have Primal Prayers, but they don't have the combo by the looks of things. Interesting. So we've obviously got quite a few options here, especially with Khan. So I think we want to play the Ghost Quarter and play the Vista here. Just trying to look at what we've got in the sideboard. So we've obviously got Haywire Might, which could force them to... play whatever creatures they've got. I'm pretty sure if they had the combo, they would have just done it during their turn, because it's really risky to wait until our turn. So here, I'm going to keep using the Vista just to see if we can mill over more lands, or, potentially get more... Well, if we get Omniscience in the graveyard here, we can just win, now, right? So if we do happen to mill over Omniscience, we can just win. That would be really good, obviously. Okay, don't mill over the Omniscience, unfortunately, but we can go Khan minus... grab Haywire Might, take out the Primal Prayers, and that should hopefully cut them off comboing for now at least. We could obviously get Damping Sphere as well, but, that also, can cut us off our combo. So if we have an alternative, I would rather go for that. Oh, interesting, they are on... So they're running Recruiter of the Guard and stock up, which is interesting. A lot of 3-drops. So we'll see what they tutor here. Okay, they pick up a Guide of Souls. Do they play that? Presumably they'll use this last energy here. Get a creature into play for free, essentially. And then we can take out the Primal Prez, force them to put the creature in play. Okay, just the Guide of Souls. That's not too bad. And then I think I'm going to use Ghost Quarter here. It'd be very useful. Well, if they're only running a basic forest, that'd be ideal. But either way, if they're a 3-color deck, this is going to restrict them. And if they don't deal with this, we've got Exploration plus Icetill. We can just hopefully cut them off basics entirely. But it looks like they're careful with deck building. They have got at least 2 basics in, so we haven't started stone raining them quite yet. But we do still have this Khan here, which is very useful. Oh, Rest in Peace is worth bearing in mind, because that could be an issue potentially. There is Rest in Peace. Okay. So that shuts off the Ghost Quarter line. That shuts off the Icetill graveyard value at least. But, we've still got Khan here, so we've got quite a few options again. Obviously, we could go for Damping Sphere, but again, I think if we're going to try and target Primal Prez, it's probably best to go for the Stone Brain here. And we know they've got, it in hand as well. But I think it's... I don't know. I think with our graveyard shut off, we don't really, we don't need... okay, Besaju's a nice one. But yeah, I was thinking with our graveyard shut off, we are very unlikely to combo. We found the Besaju now, but if we go for Damping Sphere instead, that not only shuts off their ability to combo, but it also shuts off their ability to loop Sigardian Evangels, which is their main other avenue of attack. Now, having found this Besaju does potentially change that. Now we found the Besaju, I do kind of regret going for Damping Sphere rather than Stone Brain potentially, because now we've got our graveyard back online. We could very easily get Omniscience going. So, but again, I don't think we knew at that time that they were gonna, that we were gonna find the Besaju. So here, I think we'll go Exploration and Memory Jar, and then just plus the card and pass back. Kind of confused what they could have here. Oh, interesting. They got Reprieve. So yeah, seems to be a mix of some creatures and some interaction here. Yeah, looking back on it, maybe it's better to go for Stone Brain, but again, I still feel like we're pretty vulnerable to them just casting multiple Evangels. Oh, they're on Ominous Traveler. Interesting, okay. So Ominous Traveler does enable you to win the turn that you combo off, but I think it's just a worse standalone card. I think Sigardian Evangel is better on its own, and unless the opponent happens to have instant speed removal and a sweeper, Sigardian Evangel will win the same way that Traveller wins, because you can just tap down all of their lands during their upkeep. Okay, interesting. So we can obviously minus Khan here, which I think I'll do. Obviously keeping Khan around for an extra turn does enable us to keep it in play, but it's not really shutting off too much else. Now I think I will go for Stone Brain, and it is a little annoying because if we just gone for this originally, then we could have got something else off Khan. So maybe that was a misplay on my part potentially, but I was scared. I felt like from this board state, I also lose 2 Sigardian Evangels. So we're going to name Primal Prez here, and then we'll get to see what the rest of their deck is, but we shouldn't... Oh, they do have Sigardian Evangel. Okay, maybe it was the right choice then. I mean, they can still cast multiples, but... Okay, interesting. So it looks like they've just got the core of the combo. They've got both Traveller and Evangel. I'm not sure the reason for that. Maybe they're worried about Evangel getting extracted, potentially, but... as you can see here, we're just going to extract the Primal Prayers instead. And then... going to go for Exploration and just ship it back. A bit annoying that we haven't managed to get this Memory Jar into play yet. Damping Spheres definitely also restricted us with that somewhat as well. So, but yeah, the fact they had Evangel is a bit of a concern, because if we had gone Stone Brain on Primal Prez, chances are they would just have, you know, a bunch of 3/1s in play the following turn because, you know, not only would they... Well, we knew they had 2 already when we looked, but they could have obviously drawn 1 off the Stone Brain as well because it replaces the Primal Prayers that they had in their hand. So we do need to be wary. I mean, we are still at 20 life, but, you know, having Damping Sphere has really restricted them. You know, we're only dealing with 2 3/1s as opposed to 3, which does make a pretty big difference. Okay, so they do attack in the air with Recruiter of the Guard, which is a bit of a concern because we can hold, you know, creatures down on the ground, especially with a 2/4 blocker. Okay, Boseiju. I mean, I don't think with Primal Prayers gone they had anything else that Boseiju can hit. But it could... I'm just trying to think whether it's worth holding on to this Boseiju as like a bluff to make the opponent, you know, potentially play around something. But I guess in mono green that's tricky because of lack of interaction. And like you see, we can potentially mill over another land, which then starts enabling Icetill Explorer. I'm just trying to think whether we want to crack Memory Jar now or not. I don't think we do because, you know, we're not at threat of dying this turn. They could obviously loop Evangels, but I really want to have a full grip going into next turn. Okay, there is Evangel. But if they don't have another land, then they can only put another one into play here, right? Because this one costs 3, and then the next one will cost 4. And obviously they have this spawn token that can pay for it, but they would need another land to cast it. Okay, they tap down the Memory Jar, obviously trying to bait out the activation, but obviously if we crack it now, we just lose all the cards at the end step. Not to mention we give the opponent a fresh grip of 7 when they still have mana available, although obviously, you know, Damping Sphere is taxing them, so... And then we've got a decision to make whether we want to block here or not. I don't think so. I think we just want the maximum amount of mana going into next turn if possible. Okay, so we need a good Memory Jar here. Oh, there is Omniscience. So I think we should use Scrapyard here, right? Yeah, I think we should use Scrapyard, ditch the Omniscience, get Delirium online, I think. Oh no, we're still 1 card type off. But, you know, we'll play the Scrapyard, which then allows us to potentially... Okay, there we go. I was going to say, we could potentially discard any other card that we draw that's just the missing card type, but we milled over a Malevolent Rumble. So now we've got Omniscience online. And now, even though we've got Damping Sphere, we've just got to pay 1 or 2 for each extra spell that we cast. So we can go for Memory Jar here. And we can obviously play lands to pay for the tax that we got going on as well. Okay, mill over another Omniscience. Play a Scrapyard. Oh, another Shifting Woodland's useful. But yeah, we'll play Ghost Quarter. Then, I think we'll go with Verdant Druid because we do need blockers in play here. See what we hit. Okay, another Icetill's useful. And then I think we just go Memory Jar and crack it here. And then hopefully we can find Karn and probably Cityscape Leveler. Okay, wow, opponent's playing Snapcaster Mage. Did I miss that when I was scrolling through the library? I must have done. Okay, yeah, let's hope to find a Karn here. Although them having an extra body in play does potentially change things. Okay, there's the Karn. That's pretty huge. So Portal to Phyrexia obviously doesn't do much here because they can just sack, you know, the Snapcaster as spawn token and one of the Evangels, and we're still in trouble here. I think we have to take out the Guide of Souls with Cityscape Leveler here, and just hope they don't draw another Guide of Souls because we can block on the ground pretty effectively here, I think. So we use Cityscape Leveler, take out the Guide of Souls. Oh no, wait, what am I doing? I can use Cityscape Leveler to take out the Damping Sphere, and then we can just win. I think we've got another Karn left in the deck, and then we can just go Memory Jar, get another card, and then go for the combo. Oh no, I think that's a punt on my part. That's pretty rough. So I mean, if they don't, but at least even if they don't have, well, even through that misplay, if they don't have another Guide of Souls here, then I think we're all right. We can survive. We can minus the Khan, and get Portal to Phyrexia, and then hopefully that stabilizes us. Oh no, that's Recruiter of the God. They can get Guide of Souls, give another creature flying. We'll make them play it out. There's a chance they might grab something else here. But yeah, this is... I think it's because most of those destruction effects can only target the opponent's stuff, like Beseiju. So, yeah, I definitely should have just gone Cityscape Leveler, kill my own Damping Sphere. Yeah, because you can target your own stuff with it, obviously. And then I think, yeah, we've only got 9 cards left in the deck, so chances of us finding another Khan off Memory Jar are pretty high, and then if we do find it, we can obviously do the statue loop. So yeah, I think I did punt that one, although it was kind of an unusual line to see. Maybe it was a mistake getting Damping Sphere over Stonebrain earlier. I'm definitely gonna watch these back. I think actually I'm gonna bring in Dismember here, just as a way to stop their combo, because I think our fair game plan goes over the top of theirs generally. Obviously last game it didn't really, but yeah, thinking back on it, maybe I'm supposed to get Stonebrain in that first instance rather than Damping Sphere. Can't keep this one, unfortunately. Oh, wow. Can't keep that one either. Got to keep this on a 5, I think. And I think we put back a Rumble. So that's obviously a little bit rough, but at least we've got Exploration and Rumble here, which is a nice package when you're down to 5. So opponent has something here. If they pass back, I imagine that has to be a Fragment Reality. Okay, Utopia Sprawl. We can put that on green and then go for Rumble here. Yeah, I'm having one of those days where I'm, playing a little bit too fast and not quite thinking about things, but wow, okay. I mean, finding a land is probably what we needed in this situation, but because of the Khan, but yeah, we're kind of running on empty already, but that does happen on molds to 5, but we've got a decent setup here. We've still got the Khan. Okay, yeah, there is the Fragment Reality, so we might have to use this spawn token to cast the Khan. Okay, slow start from the opponent is very nice though. And I think we'll just play the Khan here, just to get it down sooner. That could have been risky into Reprieve, but I feel like we're so far behind. Well, we're not far behind, but we're behind on resources, so I think it's just worth going for that instead. And then, I mean, if I had the 4th land, I'd absolutely go for the One Ring here, but with 3 lands, it's tricky to know what to get here. Again, if I had the 4th land, Stonebrain on Primal Prayers is good, but missing that 4th land is kind of brutal. So, I might just get Damping Sphere. It's just missing. If I had the 4th land, we could get the One Ring, we could get Stonebrain, but they're obviously on their turn 3 here. If they play a land and play a stock up, or play a land and play a Recruiter of the Guard, we need something that can stop them comboing next turn, essentially. But yeah, had this been a Malta 6 and we have the 4th land, this looks pretty different, I think. Yeah, stock up. So I am glad we had the Damping Sphere. Although having said that, we could have just gotten something else. We could have got a One Ring or something, and then, got a Damping Sphere if we needed it. Okay, Dismember's nice to have access to. That gives us another way to stop the combo, potentially. I mean, I think we have to take an Icetill here, right? Obviously, we would need to use this spawn to cast the Icetill. Or actually, no, we've got Omniscience in the yard now, right? So we can go... Do we go Ancestral Statue here? Maybe we're supposed to plus Khan instead. Again, I think I'm just playing a little bit too quickly today. I'm pretty tired. But anyway... I didn't use Damping Sphere here because if we don't draw land, I really want to be able to use Omniscience next turn. And if they do have Primal Prayers into Guide of Souls, into Evangel or Ominous Traveller, we still have Dismember up, which is the only card the opponent doesn't know about. So Wow, they're just going to ship it back. Okay, that's really suspicious. I'm not comfortable just going for Omniscience here. I feel like they have to have Fragment Reality at the very least here. Although it could be... I mean, the tricky thing here is if they have Reprieve and we go Scrapyard into Icetill and get it Reprieved, and they didn't have an answer for Omniscience, then I might live to regret this. But if we just spend all of our mana going for Omniscience and they fragment it, that's not great because we lose the woodland. Although we would get... would we guarantee get Icetill off the fragment? I mean, either way, this seems like a slightly safer play, right? They could have also boarded in, you know, get lost or something. Okay, yeah, there is Fragment Reality, and... Oh, I forgot. Okay, we don't actually have a fragment target. Maybe I should add that to the 75. You know, I don't think fragments are common enough main deck card that you want it, but... Maybe we're supposed to run a single copy of 6 or something in the sideboard as just a way to... okay, there's the Primal Prayers. But yeah, as just a way to get a good value target when the opponent does use Fragment Reality on Icetill Explorer. Oh, they just ship it back. Interesting. So, I mean, we don't have enough green mana to go Haywire Might and activate Woodland, but we can potentially do that if we Ghost Quarter one of our own lands. So I think I'm going to lead on Haywire Might, exile the Primal Prayers first, and then that baits out their activation. It baits out their flash creatures off the Primal Prayers. And then that should hopefully mean that the coast is clear to go for Woodland. Obviously, again, if they have another fragment, that can shut it off. But at least then we still get an Icetill Explorer, right? Okay, so they go for a Creature of the Guard. See what they get. Okay, they go for a Guide of Souls. They're going to play that? Or they got something else? Okay, another Recruiter. See what they pick. Okay, another Guide of Souls. Makes sense. So now we take out the Primal Prayers. And now we can Ghost Quarter our own Phyrexian Scrapyard here. And then... get another forest, and then we can activate Shifting Woodland, targeting Omniscience, and just... I mean, it looks like the opponent doesn't have priority for anything here, which would be huge, right? They're not getting... It looks like they don't have Fragment Reality. Okay, sick. So, now... okay. We did punt getting the Ancestral Statue early, because now we're going to have to loot it away with Memory Jar here. But, I mean, we still have other ways to win under Omniscience, so hopefully that won't end up being an issue. Okay, now we can go Omniscience, Icetill. I guess we can also start using Ghost Quarter as well. Okay, opponent scooped it up. So ended up getting there even though I was making a lot of misplays and not thinking straight there. So this next build is Yawgmoth, and this one is kind of built pretty differently to the others, and this also went through quite a few iterations. So I'm going to talk about alternative builds of this as we go through. But the main difference here is that we're running Kami Bamboo Groves and Arboreal Grazer alongside Exploration. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is trickier to do consistently because all of these cards are competing for the same resources, right? If you have an Exploration in opening hand, then chances are you're not going to get value off Arboreal Grazer and Kami Bamboo Groves. Now, having said that, the really nice thing about Kami over Arboreal Grazer is if you do already have an Exploration or another one of these in play, then you can just use the Kami to channel, get 2 forests, and then ensure that you do keep hitting land drops. So whilst typically they do compete for the same resources, Kami, because of the channel ability, kind of counteracts that in a really nice way. So that's a really nice interaction. But the main reason I like running Kami and Arboreal Grazer here, especially alongside Colony Garden, is because we're running Yawgmoth here, which enables us to turn these bodies that we put into play into card advantage, which I think gives it an edge. Like, I wouldn't want to run Cammy and Grazer in another deck unless it was like a deck like Gates, for example, which has Guild Summit and other ways to turn these sorts of effects into card advantage. Whereas in this particular build, because we are running Yawgmoth, we have a way to turn these bodies into card advantage to recoup that loss, if that makes sense. So, like I said, we've got Expiration, we've got Cammy and Grazer. Colony Garden is really big as well to just ensure that we have ways, you know, we can turn these sort of exploration effects into value, which obviously works very well with Yawgmoth and also Grist as well, which is really nice. And then the really nice thing with Grist here is I did test Grist. I tried some more mid-rangey builds of Golgari Exploration with Icetill, and Grist just felt a bit awkward if you're using Utopia Sprawl to put it in play, because you can't use the -2 the turn it comes down if you don't have any other creatures in play. So getting to run Cammy and Grazer here enables us to cast Grist on turn 2 and activate it to kill a creature, which is really big, especially against the faster decks in the format. And then obviously we've got Yawgmoth, and the really nice thing with Yawgmoth is that it gives us a card that just works generically well with sort of this acceleration, gets some cheap creatures into play, but it's also a card that is nice to copy with Shifting Woodland that can impact the board, right? One of the big things I really felt I missed when I was building all these different versions of Icetill Explorer plus Shifting Woodland is there wasn't really a great card you could copy with Shifting Woodland that would be impactful against aggressive low to the ground decks to be able to remove their creatures, right? If we had, for example, a sweeper that you could copy somehow with Shifting Woodland, that would really fix a lot of issues. So the fact that this gets a card we can copy with Shifting Woodland that is capable of interacting with the opponent's board in Yawgmoth is a really big deal. Now, having said that, previous builds that I was working on of this deck was running Barrowgoyf in the Diabolic Intent slot, and it was running more Yawgmoth focus cards. But the issue, like I've said, with a lot of these exploration decks is if you go exploration, or in this case, a lot of the time, you know, Cammy or Grazer, it's very easy to just put your hand onto the table and then just be completely out of gas. And so if you're running cards like Prosperous Innkeeper or Marionette Apprentice, it's very easy to have hands where you go exploration, a bunch of lands, Marionette Apprentice, and then you're out of gas, and you're just losing that game, right? Marionette Apprentice, Innkeeper, these cards are not capable of winning the game on its own. So I felt like in earlier builds of this deck, I was running Barrowgoyf in this slot, which I think is a really nice card in most situations, because especially when you can consistently get 3 mana on turn 2, and then it helps you dig for your Yawgmoth, it helps you dig for Icetill Explorer. If you mill it over and it's not already in the graveyard, you can also pick up Grist with this, which is pretty nice as well. But the issue with Barrowgoyf is that I just felt, and again, this might have been reactionary because I've faced a couple of Rest in Peace decks, but decks that can just exile the entire graveyard with Leyline of the Void or Rest in Peace are so difficult for this particular build to win through, because, you know, we've got Shifting Woodland as one of our main cards. Barrowgoyf also gets really badly hurt by those exile effects. So it could be the case that Barrowgoyf is still good in this sort of list, but I ended up changing to Diabolic Intent because this enables us to more consistently find Icetill Explorer, which is something I've been really interested in, right? There were a few builds that, you know, Icetill is the card that is just a 1-card enabler for this deck, so finding it more consistent is a big deal. So I tried some builds with Green Sun Zenith to be able to find it more consistently, and then obviously the nice thing about Zenith is it gives you kind of a toolbox to get access to other cards as well. But the big difference there is you have to pay 5 mana for Zenith, which is such a big difference, especially when you're playing exploration, right? Because the earliest you can get access to 5 mana in these sorts of decks is turn 3, and that's if you have 5 lands in your first 3 turns, which is so difficult to do even when you're running a high land count. And so, you know, I didn't really think that using 5 mana to get Icetill Explorer was viable in these sorts of lists, whereas Diabolic Intent, we can go Grazer or Cammy, we can go Exploration into Colony Garden, Diabolic Intent on turn 2, and then very consistently cast Icetill Explorer on turn 3, so we can get it on curve, we can find it a lot more consistently, and this also gives us access to silver bullets that we can get. We can get Sheoldred against, you know, Lotus Field combo to shut them off, and then obviously it's just naturally good against some decks as well. We've got Toxic Deluge that we can find as a sweeper. We've got main deck Graveyard Hate in Agatha's Soul Cauldron that we can tutor, that is also very effective if we have a Grist or a Yawgmoth in the graveyard. So I really like Intent as a way to find Icetill Explorer. However, I do think swapping out a card like Barrowgoyf and other, you know, smaller creatures for Intent again does mean that we have both Yawgmoth and Diabolic Intent competing for the same resources. So there's maybe a chance that, you know, Barrowgoyf is better here to better enable Yawgmoth. I think there's also potentially a chance that there might be another card that you could run in this slot as well, or maybe just run more tutor targets, because there is a little bit of tension between Yawgmoth and Intent here. But I still think this is really nice, and I do really like this package of running creatures with Colony Garden, Diabolic Intent to find Icetill more consistently. We can obviously find Grist, or we got Sephiroth here is another threat that we can, you know, turn these creatures into card advantage that pairs very well with Yawgmoth to start draining the opponent out if we need some good reach in the late game as well. So I do like the core of the package here. Like I said, there might be a chance that this tension is a little bit awkward, but outside of that, I think there's a lot of interesting things going on with this deck. And this particular build does feel like there could be some tweaks that could take it in a different direction that I plan to explore in future, but I still think there's a really nice core here as well. Then outside of that, nothing too crazy going on in the mana base really. We've got room for a Boseiju, which is nice to have access to as a one-of that we can tutor for off Diabolic Intent. And then like I said, Colony Garden is just really nice at enabling us to have more bodies to use with Grist, have more bodies to use with Yawgmoth, have more bodies to use with Diabolic Intent as well, which is really nice. And then in terms of the sideboard, I think again it's important to have Fatal Push for the faster decks like Auras or Wizards, which these sorts of decks tend to struggle against. Surgical again. Haywire Might as just, you know, a tutorable way to answer artifacts and enchantments. Damping Sphere again, I am respecting Lotus Field combo right now. I feel like it's a very underplayed and powerful deck that interacts on a very different angle and is difficult for most of these sorts of fair decks to attack. And then we've got some one-offs that we can tutor for. Necromancer, basically our version of Stone Brain for this deck to be able to take out Val combo and, you know, obviously other more fringe combos. We got Fade from History as a really nice tutor card against Affinity to just wipe their board completely gets around Kappa Cannoneer as well. And then Culling Ritual, obviously we've got Toxic Deluge in the main deck, but Culling Ritual is much better against decks like Boros Energy or any of the Goblin Bombardment. Ajani decks is a way to take out Bombardment as well. So I really like this deck. Outside of the tension between Yawgmoth and Diabolic Intent, having a way to consistently find Icetill Explorer is really nice. I think if finding Icetill Explorer as consistently as possible becomes, you know, more important, which I could definitely envisage, then I think having access to Intent to find it on curve is a really nice package as well. So again, next up I've got a match so you guys can see this one in action, and then we'll get into the final deck after that. Okay, so we're on the play here, and too few lands to keep this one, I think, especially with 3, you know, cards that put extra lands into play. Okay, this looks better though. We've got turn 2 Grist, and we've got Diabolic Intent, which does work well with Grist because obviously it pumps out tokens, and then we could hopefully use the Intent to find Icetill Explorer if we can find another land. And then we're kind of off to the races, right? So I think we'll just keep this and put back a Ghost Quarter. Yeah, that sounds right. And then we just go Grazer on 1, and then put the Peat Land into play. Maybe we're supposed to put Ghost Quarter in play in case we draw a black land that doesn't deal us damage. But yeah, no, it's only a difference in 1 life total. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. So opponent's obviously on Eldrazi. Not sure what exact build, but having Ghost Quarter here, especially because we can use Diabolic Intent to find Icetill, is pretty big. And obviously, if they're playing the more aggressive version, we can hopefully use Grist to take out any creatures they play early, like Fleshraker, for example. But yeah, we'll see what they got here. Okay, so starting town is a good sign because I think that means they're less likely to be on Utopia Sprawl. It's very difficult to build Eldrazi mana bases with both starting town and Utopia Sprawl. And if they're not on Utopia Sprawl, I think there's a decent chance that we can potentially use Icetill plus Ghost Quarter to just, you know, cut them off lands completely early on. Again, this is just, you know, a guess. They might very well have a lot of basics even if they're not running Utopia Sprawl. But either way, I think we just want to grab Icetill Explorer here. And then if we draw another untapped land here, we can go Icetill and start using those Ghost Quarters. If not, we're going to have to wait a turn to start using them. But, you know, Eldrazi does need a couple turns to get going. Oh, interesting. Okay, so if they're on Steam Vents, that makes me think they're probably playing the Cavern Consumed build, which has Cavern Consumed to cheat either Ulamog the Defiler, which gains a bunch of counters if they exile another card to Ugin's Labyrinth, or just another card happens to get exiled, which causes us to sack 10 permanents. Or they could have Emrakul the Aeon's Torn to put into play as well. Either way, we're going to go Icetill Explorer here for sure. And then we can go Vista into Exploration. Maybe I'm supposed to put Boseiju in first. I guess it doesn't really matter. If they have removal for Icetill Explorer, they'll be able to kill it in response to the mill trigger anyway. But doing it this way basically means that we get more cards milled over to the graveyard. We're more likely to find Shifting Woodland, for example. And then we can go Exploration again. And then probably Vista into basic Swamp here, just to make sure that we've got double black if we need it. But yeah, I think our main line here is probably going to go for Ghost Quarter first, because I imagine if they are on Cavern Consume, they're not going to have a ton of basics. Okay, they do have Dismember for the Icetill Explorer, but we've got Diabolic Intent to potentially find another one. Or we could also use Diabolic Intent to get Shifting Woodland. And then even if we don't find a land drop, we should still be able to Woodland the Icetill into play tapped and just keep going like that. But we do need to be wary of Cavern Consumed. I mean, unfortunately, we don't really have a good way to stop it. If they do have Cavern into Emrakul, we're forced to sack 6 permanents. Now, if they do go for Emrakul rather than Ulamog, we do have a chance of surviving for a turn at least and maybe rebuilding because of the tokens that we create off Grist. But because they do have to sacrifice the creature and we are at 16. We just naturally draw Shifting Woodland. Okay, that's sick. So we'll lead on the Grist Plus. And we could get to the point where we ultimate the Grist soon as well. But I think we just want to Woodland for Icetill. Actually, we're probably supposed to use Ghost Quarter first here, because yeah, that was a slight missequence on my part, because if they have another Dismember, they can now kill the Icetill before we get an opportunity to get the Ghost Quarter back from the graveyard. Whereas if we Ghost Quarter first, then we can Woodland for Icetill and replay the Ghost Quarter before they have an opportunity to kill it. Actually, maybe it's the same, because they didn't get priority there. But yeah, hopefully they're not running too many basics. From what I've seen, most builds that are running this Cavern Consume package aren't running a ton of basics, so this could be a way that we just cut them off it, right? Okay, they do have at least 2. Okay, there's another Woodland. We'll hit the Steam Vents here. It would be so good if they don't have another basic, because then we force them to have another land to be able to play Cavern. Okay, they don't. That's huge. I mean, again, they could still have land into Cavern here. We could be 1 turn too slow on the Ghost Quarter. Really hope that's not the case. Okay, it looks like they don't have it, which is huge. So now we can just do the same thing again. Well, actually, hold on. We should have lethal off Grist if we attack first, right? So we attack in here. Because the other thing I'm worried about here is Kozilek's Command, right? They could exile our graveyard, and if they just pass back with nothing here, that makes me think they probably do have Kozilek's Command. And if we attack first and then use the Grist Ultimate, then if they do use Kozilek's Command to exile the Icetill Explorer, we can then activate Shifting Woodland in response. And then even though they get if they do have it, which I imagine they do, right? Nothing else really makes sense here. If they don't, we just win off the Grist. But if they do, then we can, like I said, Woodland in response, get the Icetill in play, and then still do the Ghost Quarter. Although they will have a lot of tokens, presumably, if they go for that mode. And with a full grip, I don't think they would probably draw here. So I think they're either roping or they're, setting up their targets for Kozilek's Command. And considering they're mousing over my graveyard, well, it's kind of obvious, right? They're an Eldrazi deck playing at instant speed, ship it back, almost always going to be a Kozilek's Command, right? So they can exile 4 cards here. Yeah, just as we expected. And they also make the tokens, which is going to make the Ghost Quarter slightly less effective, but I still think it should be good. And we can also get back Shifting Woodland as well on a later turn. I think our priority right now is just going to be to Ghost Quarter, and we're going to go after the red sources first and foremost, because we are worried about Cavron. That's the main card. There's also a 6 mana card, but that also, I think it's called Terminal Velocity or something like that is sometimes run, because Aspiring Spike did work on that deck in Modern. But either way, those are both double red cards. So going after the Mountain and the Steam Vents now means they need an untapped red source to go alongside Talisman to cast their key cards. But yeah, we should just be able to cut them off a lot of mana here. We could have gone after the island, but they'll still have blue off the Talisman, and I think it makes more sense to go after the Eldrazi Temple. And then obviously we can go after the basic island next turn. They could still have red source into Cavron here, which would be a bit concerning. They do have an Eldrazi Temple, but again, if they don't have a way to, if they don't have like a Dismember to stop this Icetill, we're just going to run them out of lands entirely, and then they'll just be left with Talisman and whatever spawn tokens they've got here. So feeling pretty good. And then obviously we've still got Diabolic Intent to tutor whatever else we could want. So yeah, I feel pretty good in this spot. Again, if they have another Kozilek's Command, that could be pretty rough, because then they could cut us off using Woodland with Icetill. Oh, we just naturally draw Icetill. Okay. So I think we'll attack first, just to hopefully, potentially force some trades, hopefully force them to lose some tokens. And again, if they do have Kozilek's Command here and they do want to chump block... Oh, Ugin's Binding, okay. We'll see if they trade here as well. Because, they don't know if we've got any other direct damage cards. Okay, puts them down to 3. We'll plus the Grist. And then I'm just trying to think whether it's better to use Woodland. I think it's better to go with Icetill. We don't have to worry about counter spells now. They don't have access to blue mana. Okay, opponent just scoops it up. Nice. So they obviously, writings on the wall. We would have just ghost quartered them out of lands, left them with the Talisman, and that's it. So I think we want Necromentia here. There's not really many other silver bullets that actually help us. And the awkward thing with Necromentia is if they do happen to have redundancy with that Velocity card on top of Cavron Consumed, then Necromentia on Cavron doesn't entirely get us out of it. But again, they need 6 mana for that other Terminal Velocity. I hope that's the name of it. The other sneak, the other Through the Breach style card. So I'm much less scared of that. And obviously we can't remove their targets they're trying to cheat into play either, because if we name Ulamog, they've still got Emrakul and vice versa. So I think Necromentia is the only card bringing in. And then Sheoldred, I mean, the main matchups where we want that are decks that draw to combo off, like Lotus Field, and then obviously just any deck where we want to have some extra incidental life gain. It's very useful to have access to, especially alongside Yawgmoth. Right, activating Yawgmoth and then gaining 2 each activation is really nice against aggressive decks as well. But in matchups like this, where it's they're on essentially a combo deck, I don't think it's that useful. So we'll ship that one back. I mean, this one isn't ideal either, but we've got a lot of good top decks here, right? Just any of the ramp is really solid here. Oh, I mean, that's about the best one, but like I said, we do have quite a lot of good top decks. And then now we've got Prismatic Vista plus Icetill again. So, yeah, off to a very good start here. Okay, there's the Talisman. So we'll crack the Vista first. I think we'll get a Swamp here, because we've only got another basic Swamp in the deck, and we don't want to lose access to double black in case we do draw a Yawgmoth or... I guess we don't have Sheoldred in the deck anymore, but it's still useful having double black, especially with Diabolic Intent, right? There's a lot of lines I could see where we would want to go Intent to tutor for a black card, like a Grist maybe, and then play it. Okay, we've already found Ghost Quarter. We've already got Icetill plus Exploration down, so these are the kind of really busted starts that this package gives you access to. Yeah, okay, it ended up getting there. That's always going to happen against decks without many basics. So the next up, this is the first build of Exploration that I've got that doesn't have Icetill Explorer in it, which is Enchantress. Now, I did test some builds that had Icetill Explorer on it, and I also tested some builds that has Walk-in Closet in it, which is, basically a Crucible of Worlds that's an enchantment and comes with another mana sink in it as well. But it just didn't really feel like it's what the deck needed, if that makes sense. I think Enchantress is such a high synergy deck, and there's a lot of different things going on here that I think it would be difficult to fit Walk-in Closet in. So basically the idea here is that obviously Exploration is an enchantment, so it's going to work well with the Enchantress game plan in general, but Enchantress as a deck is very good at drawing cards through cards like Stithis and Enchantress's Presence, that you can just keep casting enchantments in order to keep drawing lands that you can then play with Exploration. So kind of a nice package here. Now, obviously, as you can see, I'm not running Enchantress's Presence here because I felt it was a little bit too slow, but I'll kind of explain why when I get into more of the card choices. So, we've got Exploration and we've also got Utopia Sprawl here as another way to provide redundancy, both also enchantments as well. Then we've also got Seam Rip, which is basically an enchantment version of Portable Hole, gives you early interaction, you know, powers your Sanctum Weaver, draws you cards off your Sithis as well, so that's really nice. One other card that I was also running for a little while was Static Prison as another way to, you know, a 1-mana enchantment that could also take out bigger cards, but obviously we don't have any other energy synergies in this deck, which means that if you use a Static Prison on turn 1, that card that you've exiled is just coming back in a couple of turns, which felt really awkward. So instead, I've gone for Seal from Existence here, which in my opinion is the best enchantment removal that can take out any non-land permanent at the very least, because it has Ward 3, which makes it very difficult to remove, which is especially important right now against Eldrazi when they do have cards like Devourer of Destiny or Ugin Eye of the Storms, which can take out your enchantments. It becomes much more difficult for them to pay the ward tax and remove Seal from Existence because of the ward cost. Not to mention, the difference between 1 and 3 mana in this particular list isn't massively high because we have both Exploration and Utopia Sprawl that enable us to cast it on turn 2 as well. Then obviously we've got Sithis and Sanctum Weaver as, you know, the core most powerful cards in the deck. And then we've also got Verdant Dread here, which I think this card, obviously I've explained that this card is very good in other builds of Exploration, but I think Verdant Dread is phenomenal in Enchantress as your main win condition, because it's very easy for us to get access to a lot of mana here, either via Exploration, Utopia Sprawl, or via Sanctum Weaver. And the really broken thing about Verdant Dread is if you Verdant Dread and you find a Sanctum Weaver off one of the 2 cards, if you then on a later turn flip it face up, it doesn't have Summoning Sickness, which means out of nowhere you can flip it up and immediately tap it for mana before the opponent even has a point of interaction, because it's a mana ability. It doesn't go on the stack, so the opponent can't respond to it, if that makes sense. And so it's a very easy way for us to just generate a ton of mana, that if you have Weaver alongside Dread, it's kind of a self-contained engine where, right, the more Verdant Dread activations you get, the more enchantments you get in play, the more enchantments you have in play, the more mana you get off Sanctum Weaver, and the more Verdant Dread activations you get, the more creatures you manifest Dread, which gives you more looks at finding Sanctum Weaver to flip up and then activate to get more mana to keep activating Verdant Dread. Now, the downside of using Verdant Dread as a win condition like this, especially against grindy decks that are capable of, you know, having a couple of board sweepers, is that you can deck yourself out fairly easily, which is why I'm also running Emrakul as a one-off here, so that if we are activating Verdant Dread a ton of times and milling through our deck, as long as you don't choose to put Emrakul in play as one of the creatures, it will just go into the graveyard, shuffle everything back in, and ensure you don't deck out. Plus, if you do have Sanctum Weaver with a ton of enchantments in play, we can hardcast Emrakul as just another win condition that enables us to go over the top of the opponent. And with all the card draw and card digging that we have of cards like Verdant Dread and Sithis and Enduring Innocence that I'll get to in a second, it's not actually too difficult for us to set this up. So Emrakul is just kind of a good way to ensure that we don't deck out, which between the card draw and Verdant Dread does happen, especially in longer games. Then additionally, Verdant Dread also enables us to find Sithis more consistently. And then Enduring Innocence I want to talk about. This is basically the card that I'm running over Enchantress's Presence. And I do think Presence works well, especially alongside Exploration, but I just felt like it was a little bit too slow and doesn't impact the board enough, which is a big issue, especially against the faster decks. Now, obviously, Enduring Innocence isn't as good as Enchantress's Presence as a card advantage engine, because we have, you know, obviously we have way more enchantments than we do small creatures, so it's much easier to enable Presence, and obviously Presence can be triggered multiple times a turn as well. But getting a 2/1 lifelinking body on the battlefield is huge. It's also a creature, you know, just good at helping us stabilize against aggressive decks to block, gain 2 life, still get it back as a card advantage engine. It also pairs very well with Verdant Dread, because every activation of Verdant Dread puts 2/2s in play, which triggers the endurance to draw. It draws us cards whenever we play Sanctum Weaver and Sithis. We also have Mirrex in the mana base, which we can activate in order to trigger it as well. But the other big thing is that it can be hit off Verdant Dread, right? If we Verdant Dread and we hit an Enduring Innocence, we can flip it up, so then all future Verdant Dreads our card advantage as well. But the main reason I was very interested in running Enduring Innocence is because of this card's Strength of the Harvest, which I think works really well. Similar to, in the Golgari list, we had Fell the Profane as a land that ensures that we can consistently have enough lands for exploration to, get the double land each turn if we can. But it also provides us with a good mana sink if we have enough lands already, especially if we have a Sithis in play, right? Because this obviously is a way for us to keep drawing cards. But Strength of the Harvest is just a kind of a nice way to cheat on lands that also gives us another win condition, because this is a very powerful card once we have a lot of enchantments in play. But the issue if you're not running a card like Enduring Innocence is no matter what you put this on, it doesn't really have that much of an impact unless the opponent just has no creatures in play, right? If we have, say, a 2/2 from Verdant Dread and we put Strength of the Harvest on it, the opponent can just chump block it. Whereas if we have an Enduring Innocence and we put Strength of the Harvest on it, we can just start gaining a huge amount of life and just put the game completely out of reach against the aggro decks. So having Enduring Innocence in the deck, obviously not quite as high a ceiling as Enchantress's presence, but still a solid card advantage engine that helps us stabilize against aggro and then really helps to turn Strength of the Harvest into another win condition against those more aggressive decks, which is absolutely huge as well. And then obviously, like I said, we got Seal from Existence. Then in terms of the mana base, we unfortunately don't have access to a Selesnya dual land that draws a card like Nurturing Peatland. If we did, we would definitely be running that. But outside of that, I do want to be running Mirax here as if we do have a start with Exploration, we get a ton of lands in play, we can have a mana sink if we do have no other cards to do. And like I said, it's nice Enduring Innocence. It's also very nice against counterspell decks, especially more the tempo style decks, the draw go style decks. It's very nice to have access to this as well. Plus it can fix our green or white mana the turn it comes down, which is obviously very important in a deck like this as well. And then in terms of the sideboard, we got Baffling End as additional interaction, especially against decks like Wizards and Auras. We got High Noon, which does also impact our ability because we do kind of storm off with Sithis in a lot of situations. But like I said, I'm really respecting Lotus Field as a deck right now, and I think High Noon is a phenomenal hate card against them. And then we have cards like Mirrex and Verdant Dread that we can just continuously activate even if we have a lot of mana under High Noon to ensure that we still have good stuff to do. We got 3 Rest in Peace, which I think is a really powerful card right now, especially against the Jund Goyf decks, right? Being able to turn their Pyrogoyfs and Barrogoyfs completely off is a really big deal. Now, obviously, the downside of Rest in Peace is it does turn off Emrakul as a way to shuffle back in, but in matchups where you want this, that doesn't really matter, right? If you are against a Reanimator or just a graveyard deck in general, or you're against the Goyf deck, this card is phenomenal. And then we got a 1-of Haywire Might just as a concession to Fragment Reality. If you're up against a Fragment deck, you don't want the opponent hitting one of your 2-drops and you getting nothing, so board in Haywire Might to ensure you get value. 3 copies of Ghostly Prison, mainly for the Go Wide decks, which is namely, Borosaurus, the Guide of Souls Pride decks. This makes it really difficult for the opponent to effectively go wide and attack you, which is really big. And then finally, this one might be a little bit confusing for some people, but Tuk Tuk Rubblefort is a way for us to turn Verdant Dread plus Sanctum Weaver into a same turn kill, because a lot of the time, it doesn't happen every game, but you can set up situations where you have a huge amount of mana off 1 or 2 Sanctum Weavers, and you mill through your entire deck with Verdant Dread, but obviously then you need to wait a turn to attack with all the 2/2s you've generated, whereas if you have Tuk Tuk Rubblefort, you can just get through your deck, hit a Rubblefort off the Verdant Dread, flip it face up, and then just attack for lethal that same turn. So against decks where having haste, especially against grindier decks that have sorcery speed board sweepers, having this one of Tuk Tuk in your deck just ensures that you can flip through your whole deck, create a ton of 2/2s, and then just use the Tuk Tuk to attack for lethal, if that makes sense. So again, I'm going to show you some gameplay about this, but I'll also have the Enforceable deck lists for all of these down in the description if you want to try them out. Definitely let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this sort of video, because a lot of the time when I am brewing around a new card, I will come up with multiple builds of a deck, and sometimes I won't show all of them. So I'm very keen going forwards to do more videos like this if you're interested. So if you did like this sort of video and you would like me to do more in future, definitely let me know in the comments. Additionally, if there's any of these decks that you would like more gameplay of, let me know in the comments as well. And if there's enough people that are really interested in 1 or 2 of these builds, I'd be I'd be very happy to make an additional video showing additional gameplay of that particular deck, because obviously this video, you're only going to get 1 match of each, so you don't really get to see all aspects of the deck. So if there's any particular builds you want to see more gameplay of, definitely let me know in the comments, and I'll try and get some more gameplay vids out there if people are interested. Either way, got 1 more gameplay and then that's the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Big up. Okay, so we're on the play here, And yeah, I think we can keep this one. We don't have second white for Enduring Innocence yet, but if Sanctum Weaver survives, that can obviously tap 4 white. And then if we do get Enduring Innocence down, we've got these Sanctum Weavers to turn into card advantage, which is nice. Bit concerning the opponent's shocked us Steam Vents in because, okay, thankfully it's a consider. I was going to say that could imply that it's something like a Ribbled Shanty if, you know, likely against, is it Wizards? Although having said that, consider and Steam Vents could potentially be Lotus Field combo. Oh, interesting. They're on Grixis. Well, this actually works out really well. It's really big that the Sanctum Weaver survives because now we can exile the Tamiyo, cast the Enduring Innocence, and then unfortunately we're 1 mana short of going Sanctum Weaver as well, but you know, Enduring Innocence is going to be tricky for them to efficiently answer, and then we've got Sanctum Weaver that can help draw us cards off it as well. Vivi is scary though, especially because we don't have an answer for it at the moment, so at least we get to draw a card off the Enduring Innocence. We do draw a Seam Rip. I'm going to attack him with the Enduring Innocence because if they block we can obviously Iganjo. Okay, they don't take the bait unfortunately. And then, I mean, there's maybe an argument to holding a Sanctum Weaver to draw a card off the Enduring Innocence here, but I don't know. And I don't think, you know, the argument there would be maybe we want to hold mana back for Iganjo in order to kill the Vivi if they attack. But if they cast 2 non-creature spells, it just goes out of range of the Iganjo. So I don't think that's really as important. And I imagine, from what I've seen so far, they're largely on single target removal. If they're running cards like Tamiyo and Vivi, I don't think they're likely to have main deck sweepers. So I think getting Sanctum Weaver down ensures that we have enough mana for next turn if we do draw stuff. But having said that, if we draw a land, we're in real trouble here. So maybe it's best to hold on to 1 Sanctum Weaver so that we at least then have a card, you know, we get another look off Enduring Innocence. Oh, okay, perfect. We found a Sithis though. So yeah, maybe it was a little bit greedy because if we had drawn another land there, we're in real trouble. But thankfully, we drew the Sithis here, which is huge. So now we can tap the Sanctum Weaver for green. Draws a card off the Sprawl. Oh, perfect. I was going to say, Seal from Existence is the card we really want to find because that then gives us an out to Vivi. We already have the Seam Rip for the Dreadhorde Arcanist as well. So definitely fortunate with the Sithis draw. But, you know, we've got a lot of good draws in this situation as well, right? Verdant Dread, any other card that triggers Enduring Innocence is pretty huge. Wow, okay, opponent just scoops it up. So end up getting their game 1. So it looks like the opponent's on Grixis Wizards, which is interesting. Maybe the black is for Thoughtseize, which is something I've tried in the past, but wasn't really sure if the black splash was worth it in terms of the, you know, it does make the mana base a lot more painful. So I do want the Baffling Ends here, but it's tricky to know what to cut because most of the stuff that we've got here is going to be good in the matchup. I really want to keep the Enduring Innocences in, you know, as a way to potentially load it up with Strength of the Harvest. And then I think we can cut Exploration. Sanctum Weaver is less, you know, less powerful in this matchup when they have a lot of single target removal, whereas at least Sithis gets you value the turn it comes down if you have another enchantment, whereas Sanctum Weaver, you know, is very likely to just die before you get to untap with it, although it does make Verdant Dread a little bit worse, so we'll have to see. Not 100% sure the best way to sideboard in this matchup. Okay, this hand looks pretty good. Again, we don't have a second white source without this Sanctum Weaver surviving, but turn 1 Exploration is always a 6-star. Okay, now we've got Exploration. We've got Sithis now as well, which is pretty nice. Again, don't have the second white false Seal from Existence, which is a little bit awkward. Okay, they do have Symmetry Sage, which has prowess and its own buff ability. And they've got another Teachings here, so good start from the opponent for sure. Really hoping to see another white source here, though. Okay, I mean, another land in general also works. So now we can go Forest Boseiju, Sithis, Sanctum Weaver. And hopefully we can draw a white source here. That would be huge. Okay, perfect. Now we've got a white source, so now we can either Seal from Existence or Enduring Innocence, or potentially both if Sanctum Weaver survives here. Which is, I mean, it's pretty unlikely. They are very likely to have a lot of spot removal. Oh, wow, they have Thoughtseize. Okay, so that is largely what the black splash will be for then. Obviously, they can flash that back with Arcanist. Wow, interesting. They take out Enduring Innocence. Wow, if they're tapped out here, we get to Seal from Existence the Symmetry Sage, which I'm really happy about. I mean, having said that, Enduring Innocence is also going to be annoying for them to deal with and can gain me life back as well. So, you know, that would also cause them problems. But I'm actually pretty happy for, you know, to be left with the Seal from Existence, especially with Sithis here as well. Okay, now we've got Utopia Sprawl again, so we can, you know, hopefully keep drawing cards here and get a good use for Sanctum Weaver. Oh, perfect. Okay, Verdant Dread is sick. Now we can crack a land, go Verdant Dread, activate Verdant Dread as well immediately because of the Sanctum Weaver mana. And then hopefully we can find more Sanctum Weavers off this Verdant Dread. Oh, okay, we just drew one. That's pretty nice as well. Obviously, it would be better if we hit it off the Verdant Dread. And then in terms of the other card, I always bear Emrakul in mind. You know, Emrakul, we are likely to hit it via Verdant Dread at some point, and I would rather have good quality cards in the graveyard to be able to reuse. So here, for example, I will take a land over a Seal from Existence. Obviously, if the card that we hit was a creature like Sanctum Weaver instead, then that would be better because we can actually flip it into a creature. But if we get the option of a land and an enchantment, I'll almost always put the land in play, because if we then do get to Emrakul to put our graveyard back in the library, we will have, you know, loads of enchantments, loads of actual gas to go off with. Okay, so they do have VV with haste, which is pretty scary. Wow, and Mox Amber, interesting. So they're not exactly on Is It Wizards really. They're more on Grixis VV by the looks of things. And they're kind of popping off here, right? They've got an 8/11. I mean, thankfully it doesn't have trample, so we can chump block here, but you know, that's pretty scary. Okay, then there's Symmetry Sage with haste. Really hope they don't have a way to trigger it. Okay, they put Gigantha in hand. Do they have a Ribble Shanty? No, okay. So just got to block the VV here. Definitely can't let 8 damage go through. Oh, okay, Baffling End's a nice one. Now we can Baffling End the VV, and then we can just start activating Verdant Dread a ton here because we've got so much mana. Okay, yeah, we got there. Nice. That felt pretty good.